This is a podcast with Chris Barley from Converso and Chris Harry from Compendium Solutions. Welcome to our show, Leaders with Suspicions. I hope you enjoy.
Chris, welcome to our podcast where we talk to leaders in terms of what made them who they are. So please introduce yourself and your business.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. So my name is Chris Barley. I'm founder of Converso, and we are an AI messaging and voice platform. And what we do is we manage interactions with customers, businesses, customers. And I guess what makes us unique in this field, there are a few players in this field, but what makes us unique is really the ability to give businesses a 360 view of all of their communications. So what that means is being able to manage those interactions across multiple different channels, but also across multiple different departments as well. So not just your customer support, but maybe your lead generation, your accounts, sales. And really this is important from the point of view of giving AI the ability to leverage as much data as possible about customers and your business. So that's really where we're at. It's a long journey, but we're just getting started.
So as you said, you're a founder and you're just getting started, but usually people, may start a business at a certain point when they feel like, right, there's a problem I need to solve. So tell me about your journey and what led you to that decision.
Well, there are probably a number of different reasons. I've always been somebody who wanted to build, and I think combining that with really originally an opportunity to look at how businesses were interacting with their customers outside the voice arena. I was originally in hosted voice communications, and it became apparent that a lot of businesses want to reach out over different channels, like for instance WhatsApp, to be able to better interact with customers. So we developed a platform to be able to manage those interactions, those customer chats around messaging and on messaging platforms. And we were developing that for a year or so, and then ChatGPT came along, and we were in quite a good position because we had a chat interface. That chat interface enabled us to obviously integrate ChatGPT as a product and as an API product. So we've kind of pivoted to AI and built in AI as a product from the ground up, so that we can add an extra level of intelligence and value to our business customers. So it's been a long and winding road, I guess. But I think there's so much now that AI can offer. I think it's a big strategic decision, certainly for a startup a couple of years ago, to move into and prioritize AI as a product. But I think we're seeing some great payback now, great opportunities, and clearly the market is wide open for innovators in various different functional areas. And of course, ours is customer interactions, and I think there's some great products that we've got on the roadmap and great opportunities there.
I think, given some of what I do in terms of helping advise businesses on what to choose, it's a massively confusing and crowded market at the moment. How do you see the market and where you fit in it?
Well, I think that I see there are certainly traditional customer support tools out there that are adding in layers of AI in various stages of their product. I think we come at a slightly different point of view because we're slightly later as a product to the area. So what we've enabled our platform to do is not just to look at one functional area, customer support, but to look at multiple different areas within your business. And I think that the key thing that anybody looking at the way their business interacts with customers, they have to kind of go to where the puck is skating, insofar as understanding that AI is really going to give the maximum amount of value when it has the maximum view of all of those different types of interaction across all those different types of departments. So really the way I think I think it's best to look at it is being able to assess how much suppliers are able to bring in all of your different strands of communication and make sure that AI can manage those interactions, but not just manage those interactions, but just can also plan around follow-ups, being able to plan further actions downstream of that initial interaction. I think so many cases, an interaction, say a phone call, demands some kind of follow-up, and that follow-up in a lot of cases is part of a fixed workflow, which is very hard to maintain and is very rigid in its approach to running a business. But what we want to do is being able to keep everything within a view of an AI tool can mean that you can have a flexible approach to the way you follow up to those interactions. I think that's a big challenge for lots of legacy players is kind of making sure that AI has a view on all of those different ways of your business getting in contact with your customers getting in contact with your business. And I think that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to make sure that AI has a view and a role in every type of interaction, no matter what the channel and no matter what the department.
Traditionally, I guess people have put a CRM system behind that contact layer, yeah. But in many ways, CRMs require you to do a lot of work. I think I heard you talk about a slightly different model where you're distributing that service across the right functions. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you will clearly have those traditional applications like CRM, like ticketing, but a lot of those customer silos, if you like, those customer records, they are in effect managing an interaction with your customer, but that data is in a silo of itself. And we see ourselves as being the interaction layer that can interface in with, for instance, a CRM or a ticketing tool. But in other cases, rather than having to go to that third-party tool and extract data to, let's say, provide an informed response to a customer's question, we can actually manage that data at the layer of the interaction rather than having to go all the way back into the application itself. And what this means is that you've got a much more efficient system, you've got a much better view, a 360 view of your customers, rather than constantly having to pull back into third-party applications. And I think this is what we'll see more of as the AI journey progresses. AI is obviously very good at being able to structure unstructured data. And by bringing all that data together into one place, that point of contact, if you like, it becomes a much more efficient way of dealing with all of those different types of contacts and interactions from your customers, rather than trying to channel it back to a siloed application that maybe is not as good as it should be in communicating with other areas of the business.
Okay. I think one of the difficulties, I guess, organizations have in implementing AI is knowing what data to feed it and the security around that data. So I'm assuming that you have some kind of knowledge base that the AI is learning from or digesting or summarizing. So talk about what that onboarding would look like for a customer.
Well, I think, yeah, like a lot of these things, I mean, we're progressing this, as we kind of develop the product. I think as we are at the moment, our knowledge base constitutes of predominantly of customer-facing information. So we're not dealing ostensibly with anything particularly confidential. Most of those types of interactions that are AI-driven are around things like customer support. So a knowledge base then would be built up of product information, product data sheets, not internal knowledge bases themselves within the company. So I think that there's more challenges when you come to use AI for PII, personal identifiable information, and the restrictions around that. And we were working towards that stage, but I think right now the majority of what we're doing in an AI environment is in a customer support role or a sales support role, where we're answering questions that really involve predominantly customer-facing or public-facing information around a product or a business. As I think the tools improve and as we develop internally security around managing customer information, private customer information, then I think that will change. But I think, you know, for us as a business, we want to make sure that we can, you know, we can kind of walk before we run.
So just to bring it to life for somebody onboarding, then do we just give access to your software to our SharePoint, or effectively do we have to feed the beast?
Well, at the moment, it is quite a manual process. So it is feeding the beast, as you put it, which is quite a good analogy. It's really a question of the customer doing quite a lot of the work and being able to upload their own data. But I think that, you know, and our plans are to move that to a case where you can integrate with your SharePoint or your Google Drive or whatever it may be. And obviously that has the advantage of managing any updates that you have to your data, to your product information, that type of thing. I think also what's vitally important is the ability for customers to amend responses and to feed back into the model. So in effect, they are almost training the model. I know the word training is often used inaccurately when it comes to AI, but in effect, they are bespoking that model for their own data, feeding back what's right about a response, what's wrong about a response, correcting responses. So the AI can actually learn as it goes through the process of answering customers' interactions. I think that's a really key part to all knowledge bases that AI has access to. And that's something that we're integrating into the products as we speak.
Okay. So it's a crowded marketplace, yeah? And you founded this business. You obviously think you can win. So for all of those people out there who are listening to this who, I want to start a startup, yeah? How have you approached that competitive positioning and where you're going to play and where you're not going to play?
Well, I think that there are many different ways of approaching it. I think that really one of the most important things is to start off by doing something that you're really passionate about. I mean, it's a long haul. It can be a long grind when you are starting up your own business. So if you don't have a passion about what you do and the problem that you're solving, I mean, it sounds quite a cliche, but I think as kind of one foundational bit of advice, it would be, yeah, to have something that really kind of burns at your soul and that you really want to solve. I think that also you've got to be very clear about the problem that you're solving to make sure that certainly in a world of AI, you don't go off at a tangent, you don't start to get yourself into a position where you are defocused from really assessing that problem and solving it. I think it's very easy to enlarge the scope, to drift with the scope of your project, which means that it becomes very difficult sometimes to solve a particular problem. You end up really, obviously with a startup with finite resources spread across multiple different areas. So I think really having a passion and having a focus are the starting points. And really, then you've got a chance at being able to pick a particular problem in the market that you know about and start to solve that. But I think those are really the kind of foundational elements before you get into actually kind of building anything or you get into really writing a line of code. Then of course, you know, you've got to have the right team around you. You've got to have the abilities to deliver. Those things are much easier now with AI. You can outsource things to intelligent agents to do some of that work, but even so, you've got to have people that you know and trust. It's very difficult to do it on your own. So having a kind of core team of people that may not be co-founders, but people you can rely and trust upon and bounce ideas off. I think really those are the three key things that I would say are key to getting a business off the ground.
And where are you on the journey? Where's the business up to?
So we've actually just been going through some rework on our platform to integrate in AI in various different elements that I just touched upon earlier. So we're launching that to a small group of beta customers, and that's going public in the next couple of weeks. So that this is an important moment for us. We're opening the kind of gates, as it were, or slightly opening the gates to public use, and then we'll be ramping up our profile and obviously ramping up some of our features on our roadmap. So it's early days. We're still in both build stage and marketing stage. We've got some revenues. Obviously, we're looking to be able to increase our profile directly in our target markets in the coming months.
And where are you on the bootstrapping versus investment debate?
Well, having done both, I mean, there are, like everything else in life, there are pros and cons to everything. And I think on balance, though, if you can bootstrap something and if you can get something to an early revenue stage, I think that's just such a valuable place to be. It gives you so many more cards to play in every direction. I mean, and again, I think with AI, I think it enables you to be able to spin out whatever dollars or pounds you have to invest to a much greater degree. So I think that it's more possible to bootstrap. So it's certainly an advisable route to try and get something up and running with as little cash as possible, that can just do one thing, and at least you've got some validation that you can use either to generate more cash or to then go to an investor. I think there's a lot of talk now that you've got potentially billion-dollar companies that are being run by one founder. I think that's a Sam Altman line. And although that's like a lot of things are probably a bit hyped, a bit of a stretch of the imagination, I certainly think that the theory behind it is sound, where you can do so much more based around building on a layer of AI APIs, for instance. I mean, the common term is a wrapper, and I think that there's so much there that a single person or maybe two people can do for very little money, using a wrapper to build that out, that UI on an API from OpenAI or anybody else. You don't need the old days of buying an application server, hosting it, buying expensive engineering resource before you've even got started. I mean, obviously that's all a legacy way of building a startup. So I think, yeah, being able to get that right idea and getting it up and running is the new, lean startup approach. So I would certainly, if I was doing it again, that's what I would do, and I would encourage everybody else in the same position to follow that path.
You mentioned you had some revenues then, and then you've also got a beta. So are the revenues related to the product, or were they something else on the journey?
No, the revenues related to the products. I mean, we were previously managing WhatsApp business interactions and SMS interactions with customers, and then we layered on an AI agent capability onto those chat interactions. So that's really where the original revenues come from.
Okay. So go to market then. What does that look like?
Well, I think the go-to-market is really focused at the moment on looking at specific industry segments. I think that's a really important thing, certainly when you come to an area as wide as AI. Part of what we're doing is focusing on professional services. And we do that because a lot of professional services, let's say insurance, there's a lot of product information. AI is very good at managing and handling that product information. And therefore, part of what we're doing at the moment is making our products bespoke to particular requirements in, for instance, insurance brokers and the way they handle customer interactions. And we built some AI capabilities around that. And it's a similar application to, for instance, law firms or financial services, where you've, again, got a lot of quite complex product information. And in a lot of cases, AI can simplify that customer interaction, save cost from a product and sales support point of view, but also from a lead generation point of view. It's the same kind of story. You want to be able to provide information to prospects, maybe out of hours. So AI can provide a lot of information and provide a valuable role there for certainly for small companies that maybe don't have a lot of sales resource or support resource. So go-to-market here is obviously to focus on those industries, work with partners where we can. So there's quite a lot of technology partners involved in those industry sectors. So we've got some work in progress talking to some players who hopefully can introduce us to some of the main players in that market. And I think obviously it's great to have a direct-to-market approach where you can sign up customers self-serve in a web environment. But I think in a lot of these cases where you've got quite sophisticated products, it helps to go to market with people, players, integrators who already understand customers and can open some doors. And that's really one of our main approaches at this early stage.
Couldn't they do that themselves? That's always the fear of partnerships, is you're teaching people to replace you.
Well, yeah, I mean, up to a point. I mean, clearly it's technology, it's software, anybody can replicate that. But it's like anything else, it's just, if you're a business, you just have to, if you want to get into another area, you've got to focus, you've got to spend resource, you've got to spend time. And that's certainly even for large players, that can sometimes be a substantial refocus. And I think there's a kind of a really significant window of opportunity as we are at the moment. Certainly for small players, for startups like us, like ourselves, where it's relatively virgin open ground. It's a clean sheet of paper for a lot of industry segments. So if you can get into those industries, you can build up a presence, you can build up a value-added products, you've got a head start. And I feel that we're kind of at that point in that place. And clearly, once we or anybody else is doing a similar strategy gets momentum, importantly, gets data around the services they're supplying to an industry, you start to kind of get a moat around your product offering because you've just been in there longer than other people, and you've got more information around what actually makes the AI work for your customers. And that's quite hard to catch up, even if you're a very large player. I mean, I think that's a window that's going to close in the next 12, 24 months. So I think that if you have industry experience, now's the time to leverage it in the direction of AI, to make sure you've got something that, even if you're a small company, is genuinely differentiable from big players who do then move into the market. So I think that's a really interesting play in a lot of cases for a lot of different industry segments, not the ones that we're necessarily involved with, but everywhere you look, I think those vertical applications are going to do very well for small players and large players, but mainly small players who are more nimble, for them to actually get into a particular area of the market and start to gain experience and gain data in those applications.
I think one of the things that was quite important you just said is around this is a transition period, right? You said 12 to 18 months. And I agree with you that we're kind of at the stage where people are now really starting to believe there's something going on, and what do we do about it? I think talent can be a bit tricky in this kind of period because you've got people who've got years and years of software development experience. And as you said earlier, potentially they would build something in a legacy fashion. How have you found the search for talent for your business in terms of modern enough to use AI or think differently, but also the hard learnings of data and uptime and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess looking at it, I think the great advantages and opportunities is that, it's the same for everybody. I mean, everybody from a technical point of view is starting off at the same kind of starting point in learning about the technologies. So I think that there are two camps and there are two approaches. Certainly a lot of very traditional people who work in technology, developers, engineers, a lot of them are not, I believe, encompassing AI to the degree that they should, and are relatively slow in being able to incorporate AI in their work. And I think that that means that it's relatively easy to understand where their interests are when you come to want to recruit or use their services. I think it's like anything in life. I mean, sometimes, you get a passion for something and you kind of really invest your time and your energy into it, and that shows and that makes a difference. And I think that in a lot of cases in engineering, in developers, some people like to deal with what they already know. They're comfortable in their knowledge, and that's fine. Um, but it becomes very, easily apparent that they're not up to speed with, use of AI, LLMs, APIs, applications. They haven't had that experience. Um, and I think that's going to become more and more of a gulf as, the technology progresses. Either you've got to get yourself up to speed, or it's going to be very difficult for you to catch up. I mean, the area is moving at an insane speed. So if you don't get on the bandwagon, or whatever you want to call it now, then it's going to become very difficult for you to catch up from a kind of knowledge gap point of view. So I think recruiting people and getting resource, you can sense those early pioneers, those people who have passion for it and to want to get involved with it. And in some cases, that kind of it's a self-sorting kind of process. There aren't that many people who are out there, I believe, at the moment, who have a lot of skills. And again, I think there's a great opportunity, because I mean, you can get extremely good at something by looking at and learning from material on YouTube or blogs or whatever. And suddenly you're an expert, and you know more than 99% of people out there, and you've got the kind of remuneration and the prospects that go with that. So I think, again, as a startup early mover, it's good that hopefully we can pick up these people, we can employ these people for reasonable amounts, and we can get there before a lot of the large businesses who will obviously come into the market and increase interest and demand and rates and make it more difficult. But at the moment, I think that's the opportunity for us, is to make sure that we're able to identify that talent early and hopefully get them involved with the work that we're doing.
I think what you said is very true. I even have some clients at the moment where they're using the cloud, but effectively all they've done is treated it as a physical server remotely, and they're not leveraging any cloud native technology or data platforms. And I think for those people, they're now going to miss another generation as AI comes along. And you can now adopt effectively services provided by other people and integrate them with a wrapper. And I think there's just stuff is just moving so quickly. It must be quite hard for businesses to decide when is the right time to re-platform, when is the time to shift the generation of their technology, because you could be doing it all of the time. And I think the answer to that is something around the competitive landscape and where you want to be and the vision for your business. But no easy choices. What's going to come after AI? Hey?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think every business needs to define what is their business, because that's going to most likely change. And if you don't have a clear idea about where your value is, then you may get, usurped by somebody who comes along and applies that AI, wrapper if you're a technology business, or maybe applies, AI to some service element that you're providing and makes it more efficient or more cost effective. So again, I mean, I think it's very much comes down to the data you have within your business, the way you use it, and the way you can cost effectively use AI in your business to make that difference. I think as coming back to the point around resourcing, I mean, a good example is looking at what's happened with AI, AI agent builds. Now you've got a whole nascent industry around agencies that build agents. And these are people who have probably not great technical skills, but some experience maybe with things like web development. But they have an understanding as regards to selling technical products, and also an understanding as regards to some of businesses' internal processes and problems and issues, and that puts them in a quite a good position to produce an agent from various framework tools that are out there that they can sell that to end customers. And I think this illustrates both the point that you can, from a technical resource point of view, not be very technical, but sell an AI technical product because AI is doing all the heavy lifting in the background. And then from the point of view of the actual business themselves, businesses who are early to understanding and opening their eyes around what AI can do, there are lots of options now for very cost-effective, agencies and people to come into your business and have a look at your business and make changes for not a lot of money, or put it another way, for only a remuneration that directly impacts your business, like sales conversions or revenue or appointments made. So it's all upside. I mean, the risk is really negligible. So you got a great dynamic there of both the supply of these products being vastly increased and improved by lots of people with open minds and some technical knowledge, but not a lot. And you got the potential for lots of customers and small businesses to benefit from all this technology at a very reasonable price for something that previously a big corporate would only be able to access. So these are again great early mover dynamics for both people supplying and people consuming these products.
I think at the moment that the risks are low, as you say, because if your agent built by one agency fails or dies, or that agency goes out of business, then there's so much competition around, you can just go to someone else and say, give me a new agent. Yeah. So the disruption level, I think, is relatively slow, but you have to change your procurement mindset around that and accept almost that it's a very fluid industry at the moment. And the only downside is don't sign a 12-month contract for something, right? Be able to move as if somebody's going faster than the one you're with, then just it's a commodity now.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly commoditization of the technology used in a lot of these agents is approaching. I think the one drawback of what I just said, though, is that a lot of these agents are single use cases, and a lot of these agents are, it's very specific for a business and built that way. And that's not all, always the most efficient way of doing it. I think we'll see that become more productized as we progress, as the industry develops. But I would say in relation to what you said around maybe your supplier goes bust or gets involved with something else. I think coming back to it, I think the key thing for any business is to manage their own data. So as long as you got your own data organized properly, you've got a repository of that data, then yes, you can quite easily plug that into somebody else who comes along with a better model, maybe. But that, understanding your data and having it in a format that is accessible by AI, by tools, is going to give you great leverage when you deal with these types of suppliers. And also, it's just going to give you great upside from the point of view of making our work for your business in a very quick, easy, and clean way. So I think, that's really a priority for anybody who's starting down this journey of involving AI in their business.
So let's move on to you as a founder then. These podcast series is about the people who make these things happen. So what's your life like? Are you enjoying being a founder? What's the day in the life of Chris?
Well, I think probably like most founders, it involves, just being kept awake at night, wondering, what's going to go wrong the next day and what the challenges are going to be and how they can be addressed, and really kind of grinding through those during the working day. I mean, it is all, certainly at our point at the moment when we're launching a product and we're building out that product technically and addressing those kind of uncertainties and also going out and marketing the product, it's all hands to decks, and it's quite intensive. There's no two ways about it. I've probably worked harder over the last kind of couple of years than I have certainly in previous kind of more traditional employment occupations. So yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of my day-to-day life is involved with talking to the rest of the team. We spend a lot of time on calls, probably too much time, but we're a virtual team, so that makes that does make a big difference to productivity in the way we work. I think that also, I think the most important thing for me and for any founder is, certainly if you're dealing with some kind of technical products and you are technically, you're a product person yourself, is you can quite easily get sucked into this whole product environment and the build, because there's so much, shiny new stuff that is coming out of the AI titans, that it's easy to get diverted. I think that for me personally, I do try and allocate time, block time for marketing, for sales, for being able to organize my life to get these kind of marketing type activities done. Otherwise, for a founder, it's very, very easy to be diverted on things that you perceive as being something easier to do, and you can see the results easier, because it's more determinable to see a product launch than it is to perhaps do a marketing campaign, or try and increase your SEO, or try and increase your profile in various channels. So I think that that structure to my working day is really important, to make sure that I'm spending enough time on marketing activities, and I can also set key objectives that are measurable. We're a small team, so they're measurable, internally. But I think that's really, really key. And if you don't do that, if you don't organize your diary properly, then you go off on a tangent, and it's very hard to keep track on where you should be as a founder and where you should be as a business. So I do spend quite a lot of time around that, and hopefully that gives structure to my day and a week. I like to plan things in weeks. I think having a deliverable in a day sometimes is difficult. Having a deliverable in a week is much more achievable. So if you paste those up in your to-do list and make sure that they've been done by the end of the week, and that they relate to meaningful objectives, like from a marketing point of view, obviously creating profile, creating demos, being able to talk to customers. That's a key priority for me at this stage.
One of the things I love about what you just said is that you've recognized that people who are likely to be founders are probably likely to have systemic thinking, visionary brains that can go all over the place and get distracted by shiny things. And so you've learned and reflected on yourself that what you need to do, you've compromised with yourself, right? You've given yourself weekly control mechanisms. So what led you to work that out? I mean, for a lot of people, they don't realize what they're like as a person, really. They just sort of go on blundering on, don't they?
I mean, I think that's so true. I mean, and I think it's just awareness. I'm not saying necessarily that I'm particularly good at it, but I think it's such a necessary attribute, because you do. I mean, you just do things that you like doing, and it's just nature. It's just the way it works. And if you like doing, technical coding, then you will spend your life doing technical coding. And even though you tell yourself that you have to sell your products, you will, unless you have very strict guidelines in place, you will spend your time coding your products, or in my case, getting involved with the product itself, or aspects that are not key to selling the products. So you've got to be aware that that is your, it's like kind of a confirmation bias. It's like your natural leaning to things that your brain likes to fulfill itself with as an activity. And I think you've got to go back to real basics to understand what that is, because there's no real way of measuring it. I mean, unless you have a boss, and in the founder environment, you don't have a boss, nobody's going to tell you necessarily that you're spending too much time on X and you should be spending more time on Y. And even if you have a list of things you do, you are still naturally going to spend time on one thing rather than the other. So you have to be frank with yourself and say, look, I like doing this, I'm going to do this. I don't like doing this, but I have to do this. Either I'm going to do that and make time in my diary, or I'm going to get somebody else to do it, or I'm going to employ somebody, or a co-founder to do that activity. If you're not aware of where that blind spot is in your kind of spectrum of what you need to get done and what you're good at, they won't get done. And 6 months will drift by, and you suddenly realize that you haven't achieved any of those things. And sometimes that's too late. The bus has left, the opportunity is gone, and it's it's sad. I mean, but it's awareness about where your strengths lie, and I think sometimes it takes maybe a third party or somebody who knows you well to tell you what those are, not just in your own experience, but you can be an echo chamber in your own head, thinking you're good at something, but actually you're not, and somebody needs to come along and tell you the hard truths. So I think that's something that every business founder should try and do at some point, to have somebody else involved in the business who can point the finger and tell them those harsh truths.
Yeah, I've recently launched my book, Digital Mixology, and it may never have finished other than for a friend called Neil who decided to appoint himself as my accountability officer and decided to just bully and push me until it was done. So yeah,
Well, I think there are quite a few in the startup world of these mastermind kind of groups where you get on to a web call and you have people who are in a similar situation to yourself, like founders, and you kind of have almost like a kind of group therapy session where you wail about the things that you haven't done, the problems, and what you have been able to achieve. But it's like that. It's a kind of group accountability. And if that helps, then that's great. And I think everybody should try and do that, because otherwise the creep slips in and you're suddenly, going down a particular rabbit hole, which is not the one you really originally designed or thought you would be going down. And that's not a great place to be.
So just moving on to sort of give some value to the listeners here in terms of they may be at a different point in their career considering being a founder. What things have happened to you in your career that made you the person you are now? Yeah. What were the hard lessons and what were the good lessons?
Wow. I mean, I think that, when you've been in any type of work environment, you've worked for companies large and small, you realize that in a lot of cases, you're doing something, people are paying you for your time, and that's fine. And for a lot of people, that's a great way of getting remuneration to do what they otherwise want to do in life. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I think that you have to come to a point, a realization as whether that's really you and that's really what you want to do. And if you are not happy with that, then I think the next stage is really to think around that, as we were saying at the very beginning of the conversation. What are problems and issues that are solvable and that I have a passion for. And I think that process, can take some time, and I think that's fine. If you're aware of what you want to do, you don't necessarily want to work for somebody else. But you can let yourself think about what problems are out there, what you are good at, and what is a passion for you. And that can take years, and that's fine. And I think in some cases that's good preparation for stepping out of the kind of work world. I think I probably did a little bit of that. I didn't, necessarily want to work for somebody else. I didn't like being told what to do. And in parallel with that, I think certainly now, and when I started out in business also, for new opportunities to be generated from new technology that comes into the market, I think that's a great place to step into the kind of startup world. And again, I think specifically coming back to what I was saying earlier around specialization in particular verticals, if you have actually a specialization or a knowledge of anything in business, it can be gardening, it could be anything, but if you want to then do your own thing, using that in an AI environment is, I think, very, very valuable. Because there's so much now that you can layer onto your industry knowledge about work, about what you do in a career, and apply an AI capability to that will make you very valuable, because not many people are doing it. It's still very, very early. And I think, we all live, we as in people in technology, in a little bit of a kind of our own little world, in an echo chamber of, people on X and on LinkedIn and, going on about all the great developments. And then you talk to, real people in real business situations, and they're way, way, way behind. So there's a bit of an arbitrage opportunity. You just got to kind of get passionate about it. You got to understand about what makes you tick. But if you've got an industry knowledge, you got to kind of lean in that there could be an opportunity using AI to make that product better or to add value in some way, there's no better time to take that leap. And I think coming back to, certainly when I started the first business, 15 years ago, to make that leap was a huge deal because you did have to raise quite a lot of money to invest in infrastructure, certainly from a technology point of view. I mean, it was just hard. And now you can just do it in your spare time. But you can have just as much of a significant impact on business and earn just as much money. And I don't think many people really have woken up to that. And I think that's a great opportunity at the moment. So hopefully we'll see more people understand that the risks are less, the reward is more, and it's a throw of the dice that your numbers are more likely to come up. And I think if you are frank with yourself that that's what you want to do, then I think it's a great time to make that jump.
So, you obviously, you said in your career you've enjoyed building things, and now you're a founder and you're a bit later on in your career. And I think a lot of the data out there says that later founders are more successful in general. But all of the image of successful startups is always some freshly baked person, yeah, or people, all in San Fran or so on. So, do you have any views on age or experience relating to how good a founder you are, or is it just a personal journey?
I think there's a combination of both. I think certainly with age comes battle scars, obviously, of trying things and knowing what doesn't work. And inevitably that gives you experience and you're more likely to be successful. I think coming back to what I was saying earlier, though, the ability to, when you're in your 20s, to take those steps and make a jump into doing your own business. Yeah, the environment now using AI as a platform for that. I think that that's so much easier now. So, the downside is so much less. I think that it's certainly as you get older, you get more experience, but sometimes I think more in this world, that experience is relevant, but it's not so relevant perhaps as it used to be. So I think there's a changing flux here in the way that people as founders can get involved at any stage in life. But I will come back to again. I think though that the industry experience, more specific to the experience of running a business, is what really is the differentiator. And clearly, if you've been in healthcare for 20 years, then you have more industry experience in that than you would be if you're in your young 20s. But I think that the experience in actually just running a business, a lot of this stuff now is going to be done by other tools that maybe are more intelligent than you could ever be. Certainly, from a startup founding point of view, 10 years in the trenches is very valuable. But if you look at things, for instance, like marketing and product development, and a lot of these things, let's say in marketing, which you used to have to do as a founder, you'll get an AI agent to do that, and it'll do your outreach, it'll do your emails, it'll do your SEO, it'll do this, it'll do that, it'll do your accounts. All these things will be automated. So a lot of this knowledge that was really valuable 5-10 years ago is going to be commoditized, like a lot of other things. And it then comes back down to what is the differentiator for you? It's more, law, accounting, how the industry works. So you can then use that as your leverage into starting a business. So I think that functionally, all these roles in starting a business, somebody's going to do that. Well, an AI is going to do that for you. But the foundation, the actual substance of it, that's the true moat, and that's where the real opportunity lies at the moment for a reasonable period of time.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris. I think we covered an amazing amount of ground there about businesses and launching and careers and and the dilemmas of being a founder. So just to wrap up, why don't you sort of say why people should get in touch with your business and you, and how they should do that, what problems you would like to solve for them?
So anybody who is managing interactions with customers, they have challenges with regards to making sure that their customers are happy, they're getting the right kind of response at the right time. They want to increase their sales, their conversions. They want to make sure that their support lines are dealt with in a professional and competent way. My advice would be come and speak to us, come and speak to anybody involved in AI and communications. I think we've got a great proposition because we do it all under one roof. And AI is going to leverage all of those different communications for something that you weren't able to achieve before. Be it a corporate or be it a small business. And that's really the exciting opportunity. It's a sea change, like in many things, it's now a sea change in communications, and we're leading that charge.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, listeners.
Thank you, Chris. A great opportunity. Thank you very much.